The emerging technology that our group has chosen to present to you are clickers, or the audio response system. My group consists of Frank Burden and William Volkerding. Some of the basic features of clicker functions. First, they come out as handheld electronic keypads similar to TV remotes that allow the user or a student to provide a response to a question, survey, or scenario. Now, your schools have all the schools out there may have different types of clicker introduction. Because of that, they are usually handheld and a remote cable, but sometimes they may be wired or part of a computer program. They don't all come in the same exact thing. They're used the same, they respond the same, but the setup may be different depending on which type of system you have. Now, the clickers respond to a computer program that will show a frequency distribution to the responses given by the group or class. So when you ask questions, the program that will be displayed will show a frequency chart to show how the students responded. So you'll see the numbers, this way the students responded to each part of the question. And the frequency distribution results are usually displayed for the whole group viewing. They don't have to necessarily be displayed for the whole group viewing, but usually that's part of the whole process, and you'll see as we move on through this presentation. Alright, how do clickers support education? Well, as Bruff said, it uses it through contingent teaching, where a teacher will pose a question and the students will respond individually. This is great because as an assessment it gets the whole class involved instead of, as usually a teacher may ask one student and try to get gauge by asking a variety of students through the class individual questions. Here the whole class will respond to one question. Students who may, and this may help because students who may not have answered in the past for fear of getting it wrong or looking stupid, and you know as a student, you've been a student yourself, you don't necessarily want to always answer a question and be the center of attention in class. Here, as the whole classroom is involved, every kid's answering, every kid is involved in the answer, meaning there's not one person being pointed out. So it may be easier for them to attempt the answer or be involved in the question. They may feel more confident in answering the question knowing that no one's all looking at them as the answer. And so now they're making an attempt and their brain is being a part of the educational process. Teachers can see the result and gauge the class as a whole is understanding the material. Now this is great for the teachers because instead of going around and asking each individual student over a period of time, it may take quicker to ask the whole class, ask one question and respond, and then actually get a whole class response and a whole class understanding. The teacher can see that what the whole class is getting through what they're teaching. If the responses show the class has learned the material, then the teacher can move on. And again, that's good. If there's a whole class understanding or a majority of the kids are getting the material, the student or the teacher can move on with the material. But if they're not getting it, then she may determine, or the teacher may determine, that a reteach may be needed. Alright, here's some personal experience. Now, I never use these personally in class myself, but I've seen them in use, and I observed it as part of being an administrator and as a teacher. One in particular I like to talk about is a science class who was working with kids in different forms of energy. And in using these response clicker systems, they set up questions or scenarios that had the students respond to how different energy was being used or what type of energy is being reused. Now, the first response wasn't necessarily the result the teacher was looking for. What they would do with the first response is put the students in groups and have these groups discuss the response that was given. The kids students say that thought it was right, it was wrong, and why. And the whole idea is to get a debate going among the students. Then the students answer the question a second time, and again individually done. And with that, the teacher would then respond to that second result, whether it's right or it's wrong, and then cause another classroom discussion based on how the clicker's responses were the second time. Seeing how the class would get it, and reteach or unreteach, or just get a variable dialogue going based on those results. And I thought it was a pretty good way that was set up and done. Again, I got the whole class involved, both in the response and in the discussion, and also it didn't take as much time as if he had to go with individual responses. Now, why is this a valuable tool in education? Again, and I've talked about, it gets all the students involved. Again, it's such a time waster in class to go to try to get an assessment of how the class is understanding material by asking individual questions to individual students. Here, all the students can get involved, and all the students won't feel like they're the center of attention. To feel the ability to answer a question or put an answer out there and have their mind be a part of the educational process. It gets instant results too. Again, time saver. Teacher can then see with the distribution of frequency charts that comes back from the program if the students are understanding the material or not understanding the material, and how to gauge the response and move the class forward from that point out. Again, to teach or not to reteach. I like that. Sounds very interesting. Again, it gives them instant understanding of where they can move the class to reteach or not to reteach. If the material is understood well, if there's another way to represent it so the kids can understand it better. Also, it can be used to test students' prior knowledge. An interesting case I saw with this, and I saw in the discussion boards, and something I didn't really quite think about. If you're going into new material and you're trying to present your lesson, you might want to give a pre-test and get a result and know where to spend more of your time in education process and less of your time in education process. Do the students understand this? Are the students not understand that? Alright, a tutorial. Now, again, I've explained before, there are many different systems that are involved in the clicker response. And depending on what your school uses, you may have to go in and look individually because they do operate slightly different. Many different types, but the things they all have in common usually is there's a clicker or responses that can be used by the individual students. There's usually a set of those. A receiving system for the clickers of some type. And then there's some kind of computer program to help display the results. Now, again, you're going to have to, it's hard because I can't sit and talk about every single different clicker system that's out there. But the one I'm going through, a very common one used is the smart response system. It's normally thought of with the smart boards. It doesn't necessarily have to be with the smart boards, but the response system is usually one that a lot of people have because it does come with the smart board system. And again, I can use with different interactive whiteboards as well, but usually the smart board is what it's most associated with. Again, you have to download programs. In this case, you'll have to the disk that comes with the system. It includes the most important ones, like the Smart Response or Teacher Tool, which is the one where you'll set up the most questions, and setup tools as well. And the reason I say setup tools is because honestly, with smart systems, they're not all use the same clicker. There's various types of clickers, even from the ones I have displayed in the picture here. But you'll have to use a setup to do that. The Smart Response Teacher Tools, where you'll spend most of your time developing, setting up classes, setting up questions, reviewing assessments. Here you'll be able to create the questions for the class, review the assessments for the class. This is the one that will be displayed on the whiteboard where you'll set up for the kids to click on the response system. And the setup will be used as well. And this is where the teacher will work from to gauge the response to the question. What I'll do is include another tutorial done by a different teacher. Actually, it's a video I got from YouTube, Jordan Terrence, which explains it very well. I'll provide the link here. I'll provide a couple links on the wiki along with this smartboard presentation as well, and the ability to answer.
Hi, my name is Jordan Torrance. I'm a math teacher at Henry Clay High School in Lexington, Kentucky. What I'm going to do today is show you how to use the Smart Response System and the Smart Clickers. The clickers are something I use as a math teacher to help my students stay engaged for both formal assessment as well as exit slips and daily openers. To start, let's take a look at what the Smart Response System looks like. Now, I have created a sample class with 5 students. If I look at my class, I can click on Students. The information it provides me is, are they online, the student ID, their last name, and their first name. There's also an Assessments tab. If I have created assessments in the past, all of the assessments we have taken will show up. So if I go to my home screen, it says that all 5 of my students are online, so I'm ready to begin. So let's look at the clicker. Each student has a clicker in their hand. They turn it on, they sign in. Once they've signed in, they're ready to answer any type of question I want to ask. The students can type in their answer. When they're finished, it'll show up. It can tell me what their grade was. It'll save their grade. I can export their grade to an Excel sheet, and I can use it for my gradebook. So now, let's take a closer look at the clickers in action. Here we are looking at the Smart Notebook software, which I would be using while I was teaching class. At any time that I wanted to ask my students a question using the clicker, I could click on the Centio tab. what that pops up are my options for an assessment. I can insert a true-false question, a yes-no question, multiple choice, instant numerical, or instant text. So for practice, let's try a true-false question. I can type in my question. If I was doing this as a warm-up or an exit slip, normally I would just write my question on the board. Now it's a true-false question. My students can answer their questions on their clicker. So as we can see, we have students signing in, and it now tells me that all 5 of my students have finished. Well, let's look at my results. 20% said false, 80% said true. I immediately know that 4 of my 5 students got their correct answer. Looking at my results, I can stop this question and go on to the next one. So we'll hit stop. It saves it. So this information has been saved. And I can insert a new question. This time, let's try a multiple choice question. Some of my options, I can change the amount of questions I want to have. The default would be A, B, C, and D. If I had an assessment already typed up, I could have my answers and my question typed in. But let's say we wanted to do a warm-up. So we'll ask the kids 2x plus 4 equals 12. On their paper, they will answer the question, and they will pick one of the choices with their smart response clicker, A, B, C, or D. One of the neat things that this software will do is it currently says 2 of the 5 students have answered, and it tells me which students have not answered. So I am still waiting for student 3 and student 2 to answer. Now I'm waiting for student 2 to answer. Now all students have finished. So I can look at my results. 1 student said A, 1 student said D, and 3 students said B. So now we can solve the problem together as a class. We can subtract 4 from both sides. 2x equals 8. So if we divide both sides by 2, x equals 4. So my correct answer was B, x equals 4. I can go back. I can see the results of my class. So I'm going to hit stop the question, show details. Here's what else I can do. I can now see which student chose which answer. I can see how long it took them to answer the question, and I can insert this chart into a notebook. I can show a bar chart, or if I save this, it will save my assessment, and I can go back and look at my results later. I hope that you get a chance to use the smart clickers in the future in your classroom.